G'day everyone, I'm Dave. Thanks for joining me. Now, today I'm actually going to just review a couple of very important presentations that have happened in the last day or so. The first one is OpenAI. I love the way OpenAI just sit down. It's a very, very different approach. There's no spin. They just grab their workers, they sit them down, and they say, right, this is what's going on. I really do like their company approach. I also like their product because I work with it a lot. But besides that, I just like the way they style things. So the first one is basically a chat about some direction on where they're going. The second one is from Jensen Huang's keynote for Nvidia. And that is just, I mean, there's an hour and 45 minutes of your life you really should watch if you want to understand that people talk about, oh, there's an AI bubble, there's this. If you want to understand what is actually happening in the world, watch that presentation and even watch this presentation in full. I'm just going to cover a couple of the key points that back up what I've been saying about the way things are going and the direction things are heading. Now, the first one is, it's obvious when you start to get involved with AI and you start to take in different ideas from different people, which I try to do. So it's not just about the compute. There's a whole stack of other questions that go with it. Philosophies, ideas, everything that can happen around this massively advancing technology. Now, without going through the entire 1.5 hour speech of Jensen's, he makes a really important point about the Industrial Revolution. So when you study history, I think the best way to go forward is also to look back, right? So when you study history, there's obviously key points along the way, and AI is often referred to as the next Industrial Revolution. But the other interesting thing is that he says there's two revolutions happening. Now, he would know because he's the head of the biggest company in the world now, and he's very much in demand, and he's a very good orator. But basically what he's saying is that the advancing computing, right, in accelerated computing, which includes machine learning, doesn't touch AI yet, but accelerated learning was happening regardless of AI. So this was a new revolution in its own right. Then on top of that, you wouldn't say the discovery of AI, but the way that AI has all of a sudden appeared in the last 3 years has changed everything and even accelerated this. And both are exponential growth, right? It's not a TikTok growth. It's just not going like the old line. It's going exponentially. So they are the key things to think about. Now, I'll just quickly touch on Sam Altman's talk here about OpenAI. And I've just picked a couple of key points out that I thought you guys might find interesting. So we'll go down here and have a look at what's been said. I shall maximize this and we shall hit the play button and have a listen to
So we mentioned that those are our three pillars, but what if this all works? We think it is plausible that in 2026 we start to see the models of that year begin to make small discoveries. By 2028, medium or maybe even larger discoveries. And who knows what 2030 and 2032 are going to look like. If AI can keep advancing science, as has happened in the past, we think the future can be very bright. Of course, we think it's very important that humans can self-determine our way through this future, but the open space that new scientific advances give us is quite impressive. So we asked Sora to help us imagine a radically better future by looking at the past. And we are particularly interested in how the history of science builds on itself, discovery after discovery. This is what we hope will happen with AI. This is going to be 200 years of science. But if you can do these 200 years of compounding discoveries of the scaffolding building up on each other, not in 200 years, but in 20 years or in 2 years, and if you look at how much this has accelerated, think about what could be possible before, you can imagine a world where a radically better future becomes quite possible. You have a data center here that is discovering a cure for cancer, a data center there that's making the best entertainment ever, a data center here that's helping you find your future husband or wife. This one is building rockets and helping you colonize space. This one is helping to solve the climate crisis. So we did all this stuff the old-fashioned way. And now, with the help of AI, we'll be able to shape what comes next with maybe much more power. So we talked a little about AI medicine. We're very excited about robots. We really think energy is very, very important to the world. We want to figure out what personalized education can mean, design novel materials, and probably a ton of other things that we can't even think of yet. So as we head into this next phase of OpenAI, and more importantly than that, this continual progress in deep learning, we thank you for joining us today. And we're going to try something new now, which is
Okay, so the reason I wanted to show that is that also the good graphics gives you a picture of how quickly the advancements are going. Now, I just noticed the bicycle there invented in 1836. My family in Australia basically invented the bicycle in Australia way back in the early 1900s, and the first motorbike. So that's in my family, in my lifetime, well, not my lifetime, but in my family's lifetime. So these things are massively moving fast. Now, another thing which is interesting is the way that the compute is now, how can I put it? Okay, so you want to set an agent a task. So the reason that these systems are evolving so fast is because they're self-learning and they're self-improving. So when I look at what Jensen's got to say about Nvidia and the chips and the actual hardware that runs these things, which is just mind-blowing, right? This is just a simple graph to show you how important this growth is. So we'll have a real quick look at this.
Believe that it is possible that deep learning systems are less than a decade away from superintelligence. So systems that are smarter than all of us on a large number of critical axes. And this is, of course, a serious thing, right? There's a lot of implications of this to grapple with. And one particular focusing impact of this technology and the technologies leading up to it, and something that we organize our entire research program around, is the potential to accelerate scientific discovery, to accelerate the development of new technology. We believe that this will be perhaps the most significant long-term impact of AI development, and it will fundamentally change the pace of progress on developing new technologies. And so, thinking about how far along we are towards these goals, one good way to think about progress is to look at the time horizon that it would take people to accomplish a task that the models can perform. And so this is something that has been extending rapidly over the past few years. So where the current generation of models is at right now is about 5 hours. So if you can see this by looking at the models matching the best people in competitions such as the International Olympiad in mathematics or informatics. And we believe that this horizon will continue to extend rapidly.
Okay, so just to cap on what he's basically talking about there is, now we're moving into an agentic framework. We've got the basic AI framework, we're moving into an agentic framework, and that agentic framework means you can set tasks for your agents that can go and do the work. So what it's basically saying is that not so long ago, you had it could do the work in 5 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Then you could set it and it would take 5 minutes to come back. So you'd ask it a question, it just quickly retrieved it, bang, within 5 seconds it's got it back. No research, no chain of thought. Now they've got the different algorithms and the different way that they use them. Let's say we take chain of thought, where it's a thinking model, right? You can set it a task. It might take 5 minutes to think about that task because it checks and cross-checks. And now we're talking, what they've basically said is 5 hours. Now there's other people saying that, it can go for longer than that or whatever. And if you take coding, for example, if you set a task to debug some code, whereas it would just automatically come backwards and forwards. Now it will check the code itself. It will reiterate itself, reiterate until it gets it right. So in a 5 hour period, you can actually automate this process. And you can see by the scale there that, imagine 5 days, 5 weeks, you set a really complicated scientific task. Now, this is also converging with what they're saying, which will be the most important breakthrough, is when the AI discovers new and novel science. This goes beyond what any of us as humans on the planet ever expected. The smartest humans ever would not be able to compete with this new novel science because we just can't think the way that the AI thinks. So this is where they're sort of heading, and this is where they're probably starting to release this material. But the other really important point that you might want to know about OpenAI is they've decided they're not going to sell heroin, which I think is a pretty good thing. No, I'll show you what they mean in context here. They took a Q&A, which I thought was pretty generous of them as well. And Again, probably good publicity, but at the same token, also very important for us minions on the ground here to get an idea of what they're actually talking about. So here's a little bit of what Sam's got to say and some answers to some very interesting questions.
Asks, will an age verification start that allows users to opt out of the safety route, or a waiver that could be signed releasing OpenAI from any liability? We're not going to do the equivalent of selling heroin or whatever, even if you sign a liability. But yes, on the principle of treat adult users like adults, if you're age verified, you will get quite a lot of flexibility. We think that's important, and clearly it resonates with the people asking these questions. Anonymous also asks, is ChatGPT the Ask Jeeves of AI? We sure hope not. We don't think it will.
I was around for that. That's very scary, actually.
Okay, since we only have 10 minutes left, we're going to, and some of these touch other things that we've already touched on. We're going to skip down through some of the same questions and try to get to more. In future sessions, we can do more of these if we don't get to everything here. Just as the Macintosh, Noah asks, just how the Macintosh was the precursor to the iPhone, do you see ChatGPT as the OpenAI product, or do you see it as a precursor to something much greater that truly reshapes the world?
This is really interesting.
So I would say, like, as a research lab, well, we haven't set out to build a chatbot originally, although I think we've since come to appreciate how aligned this product is with our overall mission. And we, of course, expect ChatGPT to continue to become better and be this way for people to interact with increasingly advanced AI. But we do anticipate that eventually AI systems will be capable of creating valuable artifacts, of actually pushing scientific progress forward, as we were discussing. And I believe that will be the real lasting legacy of AI.
I think the chat interface is a great interface. It won't be the only interface, but the way that people use these systems will change hugely over time. If you think about what Jakob shared earlier of the 5-second, 5-minute, 5-hour tasks, if you think about a 5-year or 5-century task that would take something that would take humans, it's hard to even think about what that means. But probably you want a different kind of product experience. I also think you probably will want this to feel more like a sort of ambient, always present companion. Like right now, you can ask ChatGPT something, it can do something for you. But it'd be really nice to have a service that was sort of just observing your life and proactively helping you when you needed it, and helping you come up with better ideas. And just, I think we can probably push very hard in that direction.
Okay, so when the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world that is obviously very progressive, and if you do watch this, it goes for about, I don't know, half an hour, an hour and 20 minutes or something, they cover what their funding models are, what they're moving towards, the infrastructure that they need to achieve what they're achieving and what they can achieve now. This is why we'll jump over to Jensen Huang. So the key takeaways is OpenAI, I'm not selling heroin, no. OpenAI, basically, you can just see what it's moving towards, which changes the way that going back to business and how you get your business found, it will be everyone is going to have their own chat agent. Everyone will have their own AI assistant, and it will make recommendations for you, which makes it very, very difficult to market your product. There's no one-fits-all size. This is why seeding the field and educating the AI really is important. They also touched on about their revenue model. Now, there's still no mention of paid ads and all this sort of stuff. Now, they are probably smart enough, which is interesting. They were saying that if we invent new science, that's part of our revenue model. Do you see where we're coming from? Advertising may be just totally dead. Like, you got to think about these things. This stuff is some way we've got a product, we're trying to sell you a product, right? Now, if the avenues of selling that product have changed, like I said, video starts to become white noise because everyone can produce videos of great quality and meaning. Where does that leave, people's attention, Then all of a sudden you have a company like OpenAI that say everyone use it, becomes ubiquitous, everyone use it. There is no advertising. It's just truth. It's what I've said from day one. The AI will deliver truth. If you are truthful in your business and you ask your AI assistant to go and find the information, you will get it. But if they're really going to make money out of their own scientific research, that supplements the fact for advertising. We know Sam Altman's been on record saying that he does not want advertising, right? Now, if you've got 1 billion users and only 10% are paying $20 a month and even less are paying $200 a month, you have to do something about revenue. But at the same token, this is a whole new world. This is not like, oh, we have to traditionally create revenue this way. This opens up a whole can of worms. Now, that leads me into the next part, which I thought was interesting. And again, this was a very long presentation. I think Jensen Huang is an excellent orator, an excellent presenter, and good on him. He deserves all the praise that should be heaped upon him. So let's just have a look at what they're talking about here is, okay, he's saying it's okay to invent the machine, right? So there's a phone. Fantastic. It's a paperweight if it hasn't got software, right? If it's not running properly, it's a paperweight. These computers, all these chips mean nothing unless they're cleverly designed. So he really pushes, I've heard a lot of interviews, he pushes about CUDA and the years and years and years of programming that enable people to do stuff. That's another key point. So let's just have a quick listen. There's a good visual here as well, just to see what he's got to say. And yeah.
And each one of these libraries redesigned the algorithm necessary for accelerated computing. Each one of these libraries made it possible for all of the ecosystem partners to take advantage of accelerated computing. And each one of these libraries opened new markets for us. Let's take a look at what CUDA X can do. Ready, go!
They started out as a video game graphics accelerator company. I remember. I bought heaps of it. And I don't play games. It just made the computer run faster for imaging.
Is that amazing? Everything you saw was a simulation. There was no art, no animation. This is the beauty of mathematics.
Okay, so the omniverse. We are basically cloning what goes on in the world. Why are they cloning what goes on in the world? So the robots can have better understanding, spatial, physical, everything relates. So you imagine to build these factories, robotics, self-improving AI, it's all leading in the same direction, okay? Rapid growth, rapid improvement, right? Now, that is something that is very hard for people to get their head around, but it makes perfect sense if you stand back and look at it. And if you can see that even just that image generation, who'd have thought you could have done that, even 3 years ago? So it's rapidly increasing. There's another really interesting little bit here, which I will show you. And it is to do with, here we go.
Let's talk about AI.
AI, oddly enough.
What is AI? Most people would say that AI is a chatbot, and it's rightfully so. There's no question that ChatGPT is at the forefront of what people would consider AI. However, just as you see right now, these scientific supercomputers are not going to run chatbots. They're going to do basic science. Science, AI, the world of AI is much more than a chatbot. Of course, the chatbot is extremely important, and AGI is fundamentally critical. Deep computer science, incredible computing, great breakthroughs are still essential for AGI. But beyond that, AI is a lot more. AI is, in fact, I'm going to describe AI in a couple different ways. The first way you think about AI is that it has completely reinvented the computing stack. The way we used to do software was hand coding. Hand coding software running on CPUs. Today, AI is machine learning, training, data-intensive programming, if you will, trained and learned by AI that runs on a GPU. In order to make that happen, the entire computing stack has changed. Notice, you don't see Windows up here. You don't see CPU up here. You see a whole fundamentally different stack. Everything from the need for energy. And this is another area where our administration, President Trump, deserves enormous credit. His pro-energy
very pro-American, because they're a pro-American company, and the presentation is very nationalistic, I may add, from a historical perspective.
We need energy to win. His recognition of that and putting the weight of the nation behind pro-energy growth completely changed the game. If this didn't happen, we could have been in a bad situation. And I want to thank President Trump for that.
Politics at its best. Politics in all things.
On top of energy are these GPUs. And these GPUs are built into infrastructure that I'll show you later. On top of this infrastructure, which consists of giant data centers like easily many times the size of this room, an enormous amount of energy, which then transforms the energy through this new machine called GPU supercomputers to generate numbers. These numbers are called tokens. The language, if you will, the computational unit, the vocabulary of artificial intelligence. You can tokenize almost anything. You can tokenize, of course, the English word. You can tokenize images. That's the reason why you're able to recognize images or generate images. Tokenize video, tokenize 3D structures. You can tokenize chemicals and proteins and genes. You can tokenize cells. Tokenize almost anything with structure, anything with information content. Once you can tokenize it, AI can learn that language and the meaning of it. Once it learns the meaning of that language, it can translate, it can respond just like you interact with ChatGPT, and it could generate just as ChatGPT can generate. So all of the fundamental things that you see ChatGPT do, all you have to do is imagine, what if it was a protein? What if it was a chemical? What if it was a 3D structure like a factory? What if it was a robot? And the token was understanding behavior and tokenizing motion and action. All of those concepts are basically the same, which is the reason why AI is making such extraordinary progress. And on top of these models are applications. Transformers is not a universal model. It's an incredibly effective model, but there's no one universal model. It's just that AI has universal impact. There are so many different types of models. In the last several years, we enjoyed the invention and went through the innovation breakthroughs of multimodality. There's so many different types of models. There's CNN models, convolutional neural network models, there's state space models, there are graph neural network models, multimodal models, of course, all the different tokenizations and token methods that I just described. You could have models that are spatial in its understanding, optimized for spatial awareness. You could have models that are optimized for long sequence, recognizing subtle information over a long period of time. There are so many different types of models.
Okay.
On top of these models, architectures.
I'll pause it there for a minute, okay, because it is quite interesting and quite fascinating. But if we take tokens and we take what we call rendering and we take iteration, unlike the old computer, so every website on the internet is it's a storeroom, right? It's information that's been created and it's sitting there, right? You retrieve the information. It's not generative information. This is the bit that a lot of people don't actually get about AI, accelerated learning, accelerated computer graphics, accelerated everything. It's all about creating, generating instantly using tokens. The new language, which has been basically tokenization. And as he said, you can tokenize anything. If you can tokenize it, you can understand it. And if you can tokenize everything, why couldn't you understand anything? And the only thing holding it back is compute. Which leads me to the very last bit before you all fall asleep. But this is very, very well worthwhile watching the whole thing. But let's just have this look at this last, just to put it into some perspective, right, of how much we have come. Now, I was around in the early 90s doing internet stuff, and you know, to upload a music file, for example, back in the late 90s or whatever, it could take an hour to download a song. You know, it was just ridiculous. Now it's like in a millisecond. Listen to this. This is pretty interesting and pretty amazing stuff. He talks about his product, obviously, but just some of the comparisons that he gives are amazing.
The bandwidth of the entire world's peak internet traffic. And so that spine is going to communicate and carry all of that data simultaneously to all of the GPUs. On top of that, this is the Spectrum X switch, and this Ethernet switch was designed so that all of the processors could talk to each other at the same time and not gum up the network. That's very technical. Okay, so these are these three combined, and then this is the quantum switch. This is for InfiniBand. This is Ethernet. We don't care what language you would like to use, whatever standard you like to
gum
use.
it up.
We have
That's pretty
great
simple.
scaled out fabrics for you, whether it's InfiniBand or quantum or Spectrum. Ethernet, this one uses silicon photonics and is completely co-packaged options. Basically, the laser comes right up to the silicon and connects it to our chips. Okay, so this is the Spectrum X Ethernet. And so now let's talk about, thank you. Oh, this is what it looks like. This is a rack. This is 2.5, this is 2,000, this is 2 tons, 1.5 million parts. And the spine, this spine right here carries the entire internet traffic in 1 second.
1 second.
Same speed. Moves across all of these different processes.
Can you imagine that? How much internet traffic is on the world? Netflix, all the streaming companies, all the videos, all the Facebook messages, all the everything, 1 second. Right? Now, I'll let him speak for a little bit longer and then I'll sum up. 100%
liquid cooled. All for the, fastest token generation rate in the world. Okay, so that's what a rack looks like. Now, that's one rack. A gigawatt data center would have, call it, let's see, 16 racks would be 1,000, and then 500 of those. So whatever, 500 times 16.
500.
And so call it 9,000 of these.
9,000
of these.
Wow.
Would be a 1 gigawatt data center.
That's only 1 gigawatt.
Okay.
Only.
And so that's a future AI factory. Now, we use As you
Okay, so I'll leave it there because I highly recommend you watch that if you want to have a real understanding of the infrastructure. Now, when the dot-com bubble and all the internet stuff was there, it was a very, very, very different thing. There was a new thing invented where you could communicate throughout the world, and it was great. You know, it was a very interesting era, but this is now off the planet. Like, imagine if that can move the whole world's internet traffic in 1 second, and there's 9,000 of them. And that's just a 1 gigawatt data center. And now they're building 5 gigawatt data centers. You can see why they need self-improving AI, self-improving robots. You can see why they're designing chips for this. Folks, this is not going away. This is here to stay. This is going to be so radical in the way the world has changed. And when you've got companies that are getting funded, and we're talking about creating their own funding with novel science and new inventions, this will drive it even further, not to mention the geopolitical politics that's involved, because this was very, very pro-American, and regardless, I'm a citizen of the world, I'm not taking sides, but one thing I will say, the amount of money that is being poured in right now is on a footing with before the Second World War and what was produced over that period of time. This is a massive, massive change in humans, in our lifetime, right? So hopefully I can give you some idea. Let's bring it back to earth. Everybody is going to have an AI assistant. Everyone in business is going to have an AI assistant on their website. That's rule one. That's your getting your feet into the internet world, into the world of AI, and then seeing how you can actually own the conversation by typing things in and going, oh, that really does help my business, right? So let's drag it down to the center. But the possibilities of where this is going to go are just mind-blowing. And that's why I try to cover, I listen to people like Yuval Noah Harari and different people talking, different philosophers, different ideas from all the different angles, because this is a very, very complicated thing. And you need to be well read and you need to understand. I highly recommend those 2 particular YouTube videos to watch, okay? There's about 3 hours of your life, trust me, it'll be worth it, because you'll see the direction that OpenAI are going, which will be probably the next most common usage tool that you use, particularly when they start to bring out these devices they're talking about, which I can virtually guarantee will operate via voice and an AI agent assistant. And you can see where the money is for the infrastructure, right? So with those 2 in balance, make up your own mind. But you've got to be pretty well living under a rock if you think it's not going to change your life at some stage very, very quickly, for hopefully the better. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you again, and I will do another video back to what I've been doing, but I thought this was very important to just enlighten, because a lot of people don't get to see this stuff, and I find it interesting, so I hope you do too. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. It's very hot in here, by the way, so I'm going to get out and have a cold drink. Okay, thanks.